The morning sun hit the streets of Meadowlands, casting long, sharp shadows over the neighborhood Donovan had walked his entire life. He stood by his gate, his hand gripping the cold metal bars until his knuckles turned white. Across the road, the local spaza shop sat as a hollow monument to better times. Its colorful sign was peeling in the relentless heat, the edges curling like dead leaves. Years ago, that shop had been the heartbeat of the community, a place that funded university dreams and kept families fed. Now, it was just another empty shell, its shutters locked tight. Against a future that had stopped arriving, Donovan watched a stray dog trot past the boarded-up entrance, the silence of the street heavy and suffocating. The township economy was under siege, and the numbers churning in his head, the plummeting market share felt like a physical weight. He took a slow, jagged breath, tasting the dust that hung in the stagnant air. Every cracked window told the same story. He simply watched. The memory of the screen still burned. Last night, Dr. Mbuyiseni Ndlozi had sat in a polished studio, his voice smooth and dismissive. He had looked directly into the camera lens and labeled the desperate frustrations of the township as simple, narrow-minded xenophobia. He cited 2 centuries of regional history like a weapon, using his academic status to silence the current crisis. To Donovan, it felt like a physical blow. Ndlozi used his PhD as a shield, ignoring the reality of unregulated cartels. Donovan turned toward Jabu, who leaned against the gate nearby, watching the street. "He sits there with his degrees and tells us to feel guilty," Donovan said, his voice tight. "He talks about brotherhood while our economy bleeds out. The government promised regulation, but they left us to fend for ourselves." Jabu looked at the empty shop, then back at him. "He is a heavyweight, Donnie. What can you do?" Donovan straightened, his jaw set hard. He needs to hear from the streets, not just the studio. 1 week later, the Soweto town hall was a furnace. The air was thick with the scent of red dust, stale sweat, and the electric hum of anticipation. Every wooden bench was occupied, and the aisles were choked with people standing shoulder to shoulder. Donovan pushed through the crush, his boots heavy on the floorboards, eyes fixed on the stage. Up front, Dr. Ndlozi stood behind the podium, his presence dominating the room. He spoke with a practiced cadence, his hands gesturing toward maps of land and labor reform. The crowd murmured in response, a low, rhythmic sound that rose and fell like a tide. Donovan found a spot near the center, his back against a pillar. He watched the doctor, noting the way the light caught the polished surface of the lectern. The heat in the room was stifling, making every breath feel like a labor. But he did not look away. He wiped a bead of sweat from his brow and tightened his grip on the edge of his seat. The doctor was in his element, weaving theories that felt miles away from the reality of the empty shops in Meadowlands. Donovan waited. He watched the clock on the wall, the second hand ticking toward the inevitable opening of the floor. The tension in the room was a physical thing, a wire pulled tight. The moderator announced the floor was open. Donovan stood up. The movement was sharp, sudden, and drew immediate attention. He walked toward the microphone, his heavy boots thudding against the hollow floorboards, each step sounding like a hammer blow in the sudden quiet. The crowd shifted, people leaning back to see who dared to interrupt. He reached the mic, adjusted the stand with a metallic scrape, and looked directly at the stage. "Dr. Mbuyiseni Ndlozi," Donovan began, his voice cutting through the room with the force of a physical strike. "Your media appearances feel like intellectual bullying." A collective gasp rippled through the hall. He did not blink. "You use your education to dismiss our economic survival as mere prejudice. You ignore the reality of our dying shops while you sit in your studio." The silence that followed was absolute, heavy enough to feel. Ndlozi stopped mid-gesture. He shifted his weight, his eyes locking onto Donovan with a sudden, sharp intensity. Donovan held his ground, his posture rigid, refusing to look away. "I watched parents build futures on a 7% township economy. Today, that economy is being destroyed by unregulated syndicates and counterfeit goods." Ndlozi paused. The fiery rhetoric that usually defined his speeches faltered. He looked at Donovan, observing the raw frustration of a man watching his community collapse. He adjusted the microphone, his posture losing its defensive rigidity. "My brother, you raise a pain that is real," he admitted. The room exhaled. Pan-African solidarity cannot be an excuse for the state to abandon its duty. The collapse of the township economy is a failure of governance, not a myth. If our language makes you feel silenced, we must change it. The struggle for freedom begins on these streets, not in theory. Donovan sat down. The wooden bench creaked under his weight. He did not look at the stage anymore. He looked at the rows around him. His neighbors were nodding, their faces tight with a shared understanding. He had dragged the debate from the clouds down to the pavement where it belonged.